My beloved child, do not scroll away from this moment. Stay here, because what you are about to hear carries the weight of a conversation you were never meant to witness with your own eyes, yet somehow your heart has already sensed that something shifted. Last night, while the world around you grew quieter and ordinary life seemed to continue as if nothing unusual was happening, the person you love met someone close to you. It was not a loud meeting. It was not dramatic. There was no audience, no announcement, no obvious sign that anything important was unfolding. And yet, beneath the calm surface of that encounter, words were spoken that may change the way you understand everything that has been happening between you and this person. You may already be wondering who they met, why they chose that person, and why the conversation had anything to do with you. Those questions are exactly where this story begins. Because the person you love did not walk into that meeting casually. They had been carrying something inside themselves for longer than they wanted anyone to know. Thoughts about you had been following them through quiet moments, through distractions, through conversations where they pretended to be completely present while part of their mind kept returning to your name. There were things they wanted to ask you directly, but they hesitated. There were emotions they wanted to understand, but whenever they got too close to the truth, something inside them became afraid of what the answer might mean. So instead of coming straight to you, they turn toward someone who knows you in a way they do not. Someone close enough to have seen parts of your story that the person you love has only wondered about from a distance. And before you assume the worst, understand this: the energy surrounding this meeting was not one of betrayal. It was not about laughing at you, exposing you, or tearing you down. The reason they went there was far more complicated, and perhaps far more emotional, than that. They were searching for understanding. They wanted to know whether what they had been feeling about you was real, whether the version of you they carried in their heart matched the person others had known, and whether there was something they had misunderstood all along. The meeting began carefully. The person close to you could tell almost immediately that something was different. The person you love seemed composed on the outside, but there was a hesitation in the way they spoke, as though they had rehearsed the first sentence several times and still did not know how to say it. There were small pauses. A glance away. A deep breath before your name was finally mentioned. And when it was, the atmosphere changed. Your name was not spoken like a casual subject. It was spoken like something carrying history, possibility, and emotion all at once. They asked a simple question first. Not the question they truly came to ask, but a safer one. They wanted to know what you were really like when no one was watching. Not the version of you people see in passing. Not the version shaped by assumptions, social appearances, misunderstandings, or moments taken out of context. They wanted to know about the quieter you. The person who carries responsibilities without announcing them. The person who sometimes hides disappointment behind calmness. The person who may seem strong even when something inside is hurting. And the one close to you was surprised by how carefully they listened. At first, the person close to you gave ordinary answers. They described your personality, the way you handle certain situations, the things that make you laugh, the ways you sometimes withdraw when you are overwhelmed. But the person you love kept asking deeper questions. That was the first sign that this meeting was not ordinary curiosity. They were trying to understand your heart. They asked whether you trust easily. They asked whether you forgive people who disappoint you. They asked whether you ever speak about the future differently when you genuinely care about someone. And then there was a question that caused the person close to you to pause before answering. They asked, "Has this person ever been deeply hurt before?" The room became quieter after that question. Not because the answer was some shocking secret, but because suddenly the true reason for the meeting was beginning to reveal itself. The person you love had noticed things. Small things you may have thought nobody noticed. The way you sometimes become guarded exactly when a moment starts becoming emotionally meaningful. The way you may care deeply but still hold part of yourself back. The way certain words affect you more than you let anyone see. They had been trying to understand whether your distance at times meant lack of feeling, or whether it meant that feeling too much had once cost you something. The person close to you did not reveal every detail of your life. There were boundaries. There were things they refused to explain because they believed those stories belonged to you. But they did say something that stayed with the person you love. They told them that sometimes your silence is misunderstood. That you may not always explain yourself when you feel wounded. That instead of begging someone to understand you, you may become quiet and observe what they choose to do next. And when those words were spoken, something changed in the expression of the person you love. Because suddenly, several memories began connecting in their mind. They remembered moments when you had become quieter after something they said. Moments when they assumed you were simply losing interest. Moments when they thought your calmness meant you did not care. But now another possibility was entering their heart. What if you had cared so much that you were protecting yourself? What if they had mistaken your restraint for indifference? What if certain moments between you had carried far more meaning than they realized at the time? That realization unsettled them. They asked another question. Did I hurt them? Notice the difference, my child. They did not ask whether you were angry with them. They did not ask whether you talked badly about them. They did not ask whether you were moving on. They asked whether they had hurt you. That question came from somewhere deeper. It revealed that beneath whatever confusion has existed, the person you love has been thinking about their own actions. They have replayed moments. They have questioned choices. They have wondered whether there were opportunities to speak more clearly, show more courage, or treat your heart with greater care. The person close to you did not answer quickly. They looked at the person you love and said something unexpected. They said, in essence, that you are not someone who wants perfection. You are someone who values sincerity. You can understand mistakes. You can understand fear. You can understand someone needing time. But what becomes difficult for you is uncertainty without honesty. Distance without explanation. Mixed signals that force you to guess whether you matter. Those words landed heavily. The person you love became silent. And this is where the conversation began moving into territory they had not planned to enter. Because once they heard that, they admitted something. Not everything. Not yet. But enough to make the person close to you realize this meeting was about much more than curiosity. They said they had been afraid of how strongly they were beginning to feel. They admitted that whenever they imagined you becoming truly important in their life, another voice inside them began warning them about everything that could go wrong. They were not only afraid of losing you. They were afraid of needing you emotionally. They were afraid of reaching a point where your presence could affect them deeply enough that walking away would no longer feel easy. And perhaps that explains something you have struggled to understand. Sometimes the people who feel nothing behave simply. They do not overthink. They do not retreat after meaningful moments. They do not search for answers in private conversations. But when someone feels something powerful and does not yet know how to hold it, their behavior can become confusing. They move closer and then become quiet. They show warmth and then suddenly appear cautious. They say something revealing and later act as though it meant less than it did. Not because the feeling disappeared, but because they became aware of its power. The person close to you asked them directly, "Then why haven't you told them?" The answer did not come immediately. The person you love looked down for a moment. Their voice became softer. They said they did not know whether you would believe them anymore. That sentence carried more emotion than they intended to reveal. Because it showed that they are aware of the possibility that their hesitation has created consequences. They know there may have been moments when you waited for clarity and did not receive it. They know there may have been times when you questioned whether their actions matched whatever connection you felt. And now, instead of assuming your heart will simply remain open forever, they are beginning to wonder whether they have waited too long. But the person close to you surprised them again. They said that your heart is not a door that stays locked forever, but neither is it a door that opens merely because someone finally knocks. Trust matters. Consistency matters. Truth matters. And if the person you love genuinely wants a place in your life, they cannot expect you to build the bridge alone. Those words were not cruel. They were protective. And strangely, the person you love did not become defensive. They nodded. That reaction matters. Because somewhere inside, they already knew it was true. Then they asked about something more personal. They wanted to know whether you had ever spoken about them. The person close to you smiled slightly, but did not immediately answer. The person you love became noticeably more nervous. For someone who had arrived asking questions, suddenly they seemed afraid of hearing the response. Have they ever mentioned me? Your soulmate senses that. It unsettles them, but it also makes them respect you in a new way. There was a time when they may have assumed your care meant permanence regardless of their behavior. Now they understand that care without reciprocity eventually becomes distance. They are beginning to see the strength behind the quiet decisions you made. Every time you resisted reaching out just to relieve the ache, you were learning self-respect. Every time you stopped over-explaining yourself, you were learning boundaries. Every time you chose peace over another confusing cycle, you were becoming someone who could hear a confession without being consumed by it. This is why your energy feels different to them now. They may not have language for it, but they feel it. You are no longer asking silently, "Will you choose me?" You are becoming someone who asks, "Does this connection choose honesty, respect, and growth?" That question carries power because it changes the entire dynamic. It moves you from waiting for a verdict to evaluating what is being offered. And your soulmate knows, perhaps for the first time, that if they come toward you now, they cannot come with the same half-answers. So they are rehearsing the truth. Not a dramatic speech. Not a perfect movie scene. The truth. And it may begin more softly than you expect. They may tell you that they thought distance would make their feelings disappear. They may tell you it did the opposite. They may admit that they kept comparing other moments to what they felt around you. They may confess that something about your absence made them realize how much emotional space your presence once occupied. They may say they were afraid of commitment, afraid of rejection, afraid of repeating old mistakes, afraid of being known deeply enough that they could no longer hide behind old patterns. But then they may say something you have waited a long time to understand. I knew I was hurting you, and I did not know how to fix it without admitting I was scared. That sentence would not excuse what happened, but it could finally explain the contradiction you witnessed. The moments of warmth followed by distance. The interest followed by silence. The closeness followed by retreat. Their behavior may have looked random from the outside, but inside them it was a battle between desire and fear. Each time desire brought them closer, fear reminded them what they might lose if they truly opened their heart. And there is another confession beneath that one. They may have underestimated you. Not your attractiveness, not your kindness, not the obvious qualities anyone could see. They underestimated your ability to walk away with dignity. They thought your love meant you would remain emotionally available forever. They assumed there would always be another moment, another chance, another opening. They did not understand that even the most patient heart eventually stops standing in a doorway where no one enters. When they realized you were genuinely capable of choosing peace over uncertainty, something in them shifted. This may be why recent thoughts of you have felt stronger. It is not because some magical force is controlling them. It is because reality has finally become louder than avoidance. They are seeing consequences. They are seeing that connection requires participation. They are seeing that timing matters. They are seeing that love cannot survive forever as an unspoken possibility. At some point, it must become honest or it becomes a memory. And that is what terrifies them now, the idea of you becoming only a memory. A person they once almost told. A person they once almost chose clearly. A person they once imagined building something real with but allowed fear to interrupt. They can picture themselves months or years from now wondering what might have happened if they had spoken while there was still a chance to be heard. That picture has become unbearable enough that courage is finally beginning to outweigh fear. But my child, something more has happened. Something they have not told anyone. There was a recent moment when they came dangerously close to convincing themselves to let you go completely. They may have said internally, "It is too late. I should move on. I should stop thinking about this." They may even have tried to close the emotional door. Yet just as they attempted to accept that ending, something inside them resisted with surprising force. Not fantasy. Not obsession. Recognition. The realization that moving on without telling the truth would not actually be moving on. It would simply be carrying an unfinished truth into every new chapter. That realization has changed the way they see you. They are not only remembering how you made them feel. They are remembering who they were around you. Perhaps more honest. Perhaps more hopeful. Perhaps more alive to possibilities they usually ignored. Perhaps you challenged them without trying. Perhaps you saw something in them before they could see it themselves. And now, as they stand on the edge of finally speaking, they are beginning to wonder whether losing you would also mean losing the version of themselves that your presence once called forward. Yet this story is not asking you to wait breathlessly for a message. It is asking you to remain grounded in your worth while allowing life to reveal what is real. If they come forward, let them come forward fully. If they have something to say, let them say it without you filling in the blanks. Let them carry the responsibility of clarity. Your role is not to translate their silence anymore. Your role is to listen to what is actually offered. Because the truth they are preparing to reveal may not be exactly what you expected. It may include an apology, but also a confession about a decision they made when they were afraid. It may include feelings, but also the reason they disappeared at a moment when you needed honesty most. It may include an admission that someone influenced them, or that advice from people around them pushed them toward caution. It may include a realization that they allowed old experiences to shape how they treated something new with you. And when all of those pieces finally come together, you may understand why the connection felt strong but strangely blocked. Still, there is one piece they have been most afraid to tell you. This is the piece they keep reaching in their mind and then pulling away from. It is not necessarily dark or frightening. It is simply vulnerable enough that admitting it changes the meaning of everything that came before. They have carried this truth privately because saying it aloud would mean they can no longer pretend their choices were neutral. They would have to admit that at one point, they made a deliberate decision about you based on fear rather than what their heart actually wanted. And that decision is the reason their words now sound like a last chance. They know that when they tell you what happened, you may look at the past differently. You may finally understand the exact moment where everything changed. You may understand why communication became inconsistent, why they suddenly became cautious, why there was a shift you could feel but never explain. They have replayed that moment repeatedly, wondering whether they could have chosen differently. And lately, they have stopped asking whether the past can be changed. They have started asking whether truth can still be offered before the future closes. In this fictional spiritual scene, imagine heaven growing quiet now, not because the message is ending, but because the next revelation deserves stillness. Your soulmate is not only preparing to say, "I cared about you." They are preparing to tell you what they did because they cared and were afraid at the same time. They are preparing to tell you who they listened to, what they believed, and what they discovered later that made them realize they had misunderstood something important about you. They are preparing to admit that there was one specific thing they believed about you that influenced everything. And recently, they found out it was not true. That discovery is what shattered their certainty. It is what made old conversations return with new meaning. It is what made them realize you may have been carrying the consequences of a misunderstanding you never even knew existed. It is what finally brought them to this sentence: "This is my last chance to tell you everything. Please don't ignore me." But what they believed about you, who planted that belief, and what they discovered that changed everything is the one part they have still not found the courage to say aloud.